Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
So first of all, I have a wife and 2 sons that are looking to me to be a rock. Mm-hmm. And losing a child is such an unnatural thing. That's not how this is supposed to go. And, they have words for widows, widowers, orphans. They have words for all those, but, they don't have a word for a parent who's lost a child because it's so unnatural that the average person can't comprehend that type of loss and that pain because there's just not a level that you can assign to it.
Welcome to Real Man Talk, discussing the tough issues facing men and their families every day. Here's Anthony Kernot and Carla Sau.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to Real Man Talk. Today, I've got a very special guest for you. As you can tell, Kyler's not sitting in the co-pilot seat. I've got Ryan Ainley. I hope I said that right.
Yeah, you got him.
He's a guest on the podcast today. He's going to be telling his story. And just FYI, there may be parts of this podcast that may be a little bit heavy. We just want to forewarn you as we go into it. We're going to be talking about grief. We're going to be talking about things like that. But I want to introduce Ryan. Ryan goes to church with me. And Ryan, how are you today?
Doing well.
Good. So you've been coming to the Palace for how long have you guys been going there?
Oh, probably about 5-6 years now.
Yeah, I thought it had been a while.
Yeah.
And so, Ryan, I ask everybody the same question when they're a guest on, but just tell us your story.
Oh, wow. So our story, I guess the reason I'm here, that story, August 19th of 2019, my wife and I, we lost our daughter, Reese. She was 3, and it was an accident at our house involving water. There's some things that I don't say, some words I don't say, still some trigger words, and I don't use the D word. So it was an accident involving water at our house in the pond there on our farm. That's not something that anybody can fathom happening to them in life. And prior to that, actually not too long before that, there was a country singer who had lost his son in a similar fashion. And I can remember thinking back to myself, there's no way I could live through that. No way. Mm-hmm. And, just a little bit about Reese. She was little bitty blonde hair, blue eye. Just the prettiest thing you ever could see, and sweet, and just the answer to a lot of my prayers. As a younger guy, I know this sounds silly, but I envisioned having a daughter one day. I have an older son, Braxton. He's 14 now, and then I have a younger son, Cooper, who is 7. But a dad and daughter relationship is different. Mm-hmm. And I envisioned her long before she ever came, long before I was ever married to my wife, Chrissy. And And I think back now about those times when I would imagine having a daughter, and I saw her perfectly, and she came out just the way that I saw her. You know, God showed her to me at a young age, and I didn't realize that until later in life. You know, after Reese had already been here, and I thought, man, I've known her for years, and she was answering my prayers, and I always wanted a little blonde hair, blue eyed girl to follow me around and pull my shirt tail and say, "Daddy, Daddy," and he gave her to me, and we spent 3.5 great years with her, arguably the best years of my life. And that, you know, we lost all that on a humid, hot summer day.
Yeah. That, you know, there are so many people I know that have dealt with grief, have dealt with, you know, we lost a niece. She was 16, 2017, October 2017. And you're right, you can't fathom that kind of grief, that kind of loss, right? You can't even imagine. And processing that, you know, and for me, it was just a niece, right? I mean, she don't get wrong. I don't mean it that way,
Sure,
right? You know what I mean? But it wasn't my daughter, right? To where I loved her and I miss her, you know, even today. Just as losing a niece, it was extremely, it was hard to process that, right? But you know, you ask questions like why, you know, here she was 16, she was thriving, she was a good kid, you know, and you ask questions like, well, why so young? Why, you know, with all the other things that are going on in the world, why does this have to happen? You know, and you know, if you don't mind me asking, how did you process that?
So early on, so first of all, I have a wife and two sons that are looking to me to be a rock. Mm-hmm. And losing a child is such an unnatural thing. That's not how this is supposed to go. And you know, they have words for widows, widowers, orphans. They have words for all those, but you know, they don't have a word for a parent who's lost a child, because it's so unnatural that the average person can't comprehend that type of loss and that pain, because there's just not a level that you could assign to it. So honestly, you don't know how you survive that, but people, they will say things. Over the years, I've learned how to compartmentalize pain, emotion, whether that be anger, fear, you know, something that and you'll have to excuse me, I'll run all over the place with this, but
You're good.
Something I experienced, you know, at 35 years old, after the loss of my daughter, I became afraid of the dark at 35, and it didn't last forever, but you know, something, and I'll get into the more of this down the road with our foundation and things we do in Reese's honor. I talk to a lot of grieving parents, and they want to ask me the same thing. You ask me, how do you handle that? Well, there are a few things that are for certain that are going to happen anytime you experience trauma, anything life shattering, whether it's getting fired from a job or totaling your vehicle or losing someone you love or a divorce, even, you're going to experience all this extra emotion. There's so much emotion going to come at you, and you've really, at the end of the day, you've got two options. You can handle it in a positive fashion or in a negative fashion.
Right.
Either way isn't going to change what's happened.
Right.
The only effect we can have is on what's to come.
Right.
And so I've focused on that, and I didn't ever catch myself up on the why. I knew I wasn't going to get that answer. So I'm a logical person, and you'll hear as we talk, I try to reason my way through everything. I didn't tie myself up on a question I knew I couldn't get an answer to. And to be honest, by the time I'm standing face to face with our Creator, and I can get that answer, I'm not going to care about that answer anymore. Right. I just have to trust that the answer is there, and that it's a sound one, and I trust that. Now, as far as all those emotions, when you're in your darkest spot, and this is something that I say to these parents that I talk to, whether they are religious, not religious. I'm actually in an active conversation with a parent right now who lost her son in a tragic way. And I told her, you in your darkest time, God's coming for you.
Right.
That's for sure. But the devil's coming just as hard.
That's right.
And he does not fight fair. Mm-hmm. He does not fight fair. And church today, I forget the lady's name who was talking, but she said that the devil can come for your mind, but he can't have your heart. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we let our mind outspeak our heart, yes. And we are deceived. And that's what he seeks to do, is deceive and destroy. And but that is one thing you have to realize, is that God is very, very real, and the devil is very, very real.
That's right.
And he is willing to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah.
I know, and he can't win.
That's right.
But he can sure convince us that he's won. So to wrap that up into your answer, I really try to maintain a positive outlook. I stay busy by design. We had the conversation on the way in. We've been trying to get together on this deal for a couple of months now. And I stay busy. I keep my mind busy. And maybe that's denial. Maybe it's, I don't know, but it's survival.
Right.
And that's the important thing for me. Is I've got to survive, because I can assure you the hardest thing to do in our life is to live when we don't want to.
Right.
And that's another part of grief, and another part of losing a child is not wanting to live. And it's a very real thing. It's something that I experienced, and it's something that I logicked my way through. Mm-hmm. Suicide's a scary word.
Yeah.
It's a real word. We lose folks to that every day. And I logicked my way through those thoughts. I had to. I couldn't bury that away and let it creep in on me at the worst of times. So I logicked my way through suicide. As tough as that sounds, a lot of people can't have that conversation.
Right. So if you don't care, if there's anything that's off boundaries, just say so. Sure. Right. If you don't mind, what does that look like for you?
So, I tell you, it's the hardest thing in the world to do, is live when you don't want to. And I did not want to live. And everybody tells you lots of things. Everybody has advice for things they're not living through themselves. You can't do that to your kids. I know. Yeah, I know that. Mm-hmm. Just be happy that you have your two other ones. Tell me which kid you can live without.
Right.
And I'll wait for that answer. But for me, I'm a pros and cons guy. I list things out, whether I'm buying a piece of property or as silly as it sounds, deciding what to do with my existence. Yeah. I have the knowledge that I know that my wife and boys would have been taken care of. Have life insurances. I looked into their policies. I had them long enough where they would have covered suicide. I was very sound in the fact that my family was financially taken care of. I knew my wife would be there to take care of the boys. I knew they would be okay financially. Then I had to get to my cons list. I would hurt my wife and hurt my sons. And that was the only con that I needed.
Right.
But nevertheless, I had to process those thoughts. I had to truly process those thoughts. Now, I didn't sit there with, and I don't mean to be insensitive to anybody who's lived through this, but I didn't sit there with a barrel in my mouth or anything.
Right.
I laid in bed and at the wee hours of the night, and I processed these thoughts. I had to. And the answer is always going to be no. If you really weigh the pros and cons, the cons are always more than the pros. There's not a pro to taking your own life. And I know that in my reasonable mind.
Right.
I was living in a very unreasonable place at the time. And it takes me to, I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but with our foundation, one of the things, the Reese Ainsley Foundation, one of the things we do is take care of, in the area, when somebody loses a child, we'll try to jump in and take care of final expenses. We were trying to do that as anonymously as possible, but believe it or not, you might not believe it, we live in a political world, so people start questioning when we're doing fundraisers and things like, what are you doing with that money? Well, if you must know, we're helping people in the darkest time of their life.
Yeah.
So it took me to a situation where, and I find myself and I guess I am jumping ahead, but with the foundation, we get involved in a lot of child loss.
Right.
Which is like being afraid of a pit bull and then starting a pit bull sanctuary.
Right.
I can't escape it. But it's what was put on our heart to do. It's what we've been led to do. And I learned a long time ago to listen when God's telling me to do something.
There you go. Yes.
I don't know what God sounds like, but I know what he feels like.
Right.
And that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
And, but we were in a situation with a family who, I asked the chapel to send me the bill, and I know it was high. It was extremely high. I mean, I've done this enough now to where I kind of have a feel on what these things cost. Oddly enough, and it was really high. So I contacted the chapel and I said, "Hey, listen, this something feels off to me, and it's not really about the money, but it is about the money. I'm called to be a steward, a good steward of this money, and I feel like you're taking advantage of this family. Why is it so high?" And they went on to tell me, well, the family wants to purchase the plots around their child. And they, oh, you don't have to take care of that. I said, no, that's completely all right. And I was talking to somebody close to me about it because I was asking them, hey, am I wrong for questioning this? You know, am I being out of line? And they said, no, you know, you're doing exactly what you said, being a good steward of the money. And this person asked me, well, are you guys going to take care of those plots? I said, absolutely. I said, you don't understand what this family is going through right now. They don't know if they're going to be alive tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
They don't know what tomorrow looks like. If there's a tomorrow for them, depending on what decisions they make, every decision is made in seconds. You know, You're just trying to survive the next 10 seconds.
Yeah.
To breathe. And it's a tough thing. So you take it second by second and try to keep your mind positive, focus on the ones that love you. And, you know, in the very beginning, there's lots of people around you. And that's always what I tell people, you know, just be present. Don't try to say the right things because there's nothing that you can say that's right.
Right.
Just be present. Just be present for people. Just let them feel you, you know. An old man one time told me in marriage with my wife, I said, she tells me her problems. And, you know, I'm a fixer. And he said, well, sometimes you need to decide, is she needing you to fix it or feel it?
That's right.
And that really made a lot of sense with me, because they're not always, people aren't always looking to be fixed.
Right.
Sometimes I just want to be felt.
That's right. That's right. You know, I think about your story, and I think about the grief that you're going through. You know, we just recently had this flood down in Texas, you know, that has claimed so many lives, and I went through that camp. And I was thinking about it today. You know, Pastor mentioned it, and, you know, about praying for him and stuff. I've been thinking about it because I knew this conversation was coming up. And I was thinking about, you know, the grief that so many families were feeling, you know. I do a lot of stuff in apologetics, you know, and as everybody, all of our listeners typically knows, you know, and there's a question that is often asked by skeptics, you know, and it's, why does God allow evil? Right? When you look at the death, when you look at these awful things that happen, when you look at, you know, how can a good God allow things like this to happen, right? And really, honestly, when somebody's in the trudge of it, there's not a good answer for that, right? You like you said, you just got to be there. I remember, and I won't mention his name, you'll know who I'm talking about, but a friend of mine lost his wife, and I remember showing up, and like you said, you want to have the words. This is our oldest, mine and my wife's oldest friends, and we're sitting in their bedroom, and his wife, our dear friend, is sitting in this bed, and she's dying. This is it. This is the last time we'd seen her alive. And
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water, so you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
we're sitting there, and I just thought, God, what do I say? Right? And I just sat there with him. I didn't say a word. You know what I mean? And then I got thinking about Job, right, in the Bible, and how his friends come and they sat with him for 7 days. They didn't say anything. The Bible says they didn't say anything. They just sat with him for 7 days. There are answers for those types of things, but when you're in the middle of it, you don't need those answers, right? You need love, right? You need people you just need to know that people care. You know, you just got to grasp a hold of, you know, the fact that your friend, your family, your whatever the situation is, from an outsider's perspective, right, that they just need you to be present.
Yeah, and then on the opposite side of that, people are going to say things anyway, right, because they believe they need to. Kind of like me, I've never been blessed with the ability to be quiet. and bless everybody who tries to tell you the right thing. But one thing I've learned through this experience, just kind of like the comment about, we'll just be thankful for the children that you still have. And then what I want to tell them, what my flesh wants to do, is say, well, pick one of your kids and tell me which one you can live without.
Right.
But I don't. What I've learned, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but people are saying things for themselves. It's not for you. It's for them. They need to start processing what's happening. They need to say something to make themselves feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. That's okay. I let people do that. It was hard in the beginning, and some days, some hours, it's harder than the previous hour to hear those things and not be reactive,
right,
not be emotional. But they do mean well. But I have learned through time and experience that most of the time they're saying these things for themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't want to rob anybody of their blessing, or what they think is a blessing, or, you know, kind of like when somebody gives you a gift, you're appreciative no matter what. But, you know, you don't tell them, oh, keep that, whether it's money or what it. And I've had to learn how to do that, accept gifts over the years. But you don't want to rob anybody of their blessing, and their blessing, they may feel like their blessing is to say something comforting to you, whether it's comforting or not. You have to know that the intentions are right. And people naturally, like I said earlier, they want to fix you. And then there's no fixing. There's no fixing this kind of pain that anybody in the flesh can do.
Right.
Yeah. There is a fix to it, but it's nothing. And I'm this parent I was talking about. I had this conversation with her yesterday, perhaps the day before. She said, I try to trust that there's a reason why everything happens, but I can't really find a reason for this. And I told her, I said, I couldn't really either. I just had to stand strong. And just to be clear, I was a believer in God before I lost my daughter. My daughter, and the loss of my daughter implored me to find a deeper walk with God. And I'm still finding that walk.
Right.
I don't know that I'll ever necessarily find it, but I'm still pursuing it. I don't know if anybody ever really locks it down where they're supposed to be. But as long as we're getting up tomorrow and doing better than we did today, then that's good. But I told her, I said, I just tell myself maybe there was something worse down the line for them. And for her son was lost in a controversial way. And I can't really think of a much worse way, but I always say this as well. As bad as this is my life that I'm living, the loss that my wife and I and my boys and her whole family, everybody, the loss that we lived through with Reese and are living through, there's people that have it worse.
Right.
There's people who lost their wife and their 3 children in car accidents. There's people who backed over their children in the vehicle and had to try to save them and couldn't. I mean, that's worse to me.
Yeah.
As bad as what we're living through, that's worse to me. So I told this lady, I said, look, I don't know how you feel. I have an idea, but I don't know exactly how you feel. And I don't know how I would live through what you're living through, because it's not the same. And you're doing great. And I always tell these people, you can survive this. You can survive this. You can't do it alone. You can survive this. You must survive this. And she was telling me some movements she's trying to do. Her son was lost at a daycare, and she's trying to get some acts going, and some bills are passed. I'm not really sure the legal terms, but she was telling me all this, and then she was saying, I just don't know what I'm going to do. And then finally I told her, I said, it sounds like you know exactly what to do.
Right.
God's telling you what to do. You just got to tune in. Right now you got the fuzzies, the white noise on the radio. If you just move that dial a little bit, you can hear it, but you just got to adjust the dial a little bit, and you're going to know exactly what's being said to you. And that was, kind of what we went through, when we lost Reese. People gave us money. We didn't ask for it. And we were, I can say we didn't need it, but the world needed it. Now I see financially we didn't have a need.
Yeah.
I didn't think. People gave us this money, and then whenever things settled down, we have this account with this money in it, and I didn't want anything to do with it. Nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And the thoughts that came along with it. But I told my wife, I said, I don't know what we're going to do, but we've got to do something.
Right.
So that's when the Reese Ainsley Foundation was born. And, we started out with, I don't always have a clear goal in what I want to accomplish when we're going to, learning to be a giver is really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to learn how to give the right way. So we started out small, some scholarships at the school and things like that, the things that we knew to do. And then as time progressed, God would put these other purposes in front of us, and we learn how to listen. And then, I fought him every step of the way with this, reaching out to families that were losing children. And I fought that and fought that. And finally I just, you know what, if this is what you want us to do, bring it on. And I don't mean that in a way where I invite that. It's horrible. And the best thing about it is when we're doing fundraisers and stuff, and this account's growing, and because that means we're not spending any money out of it, which means we're not losing any kids around here.
Right.
But it seems like it comes in waves. And I was telling somebody at work yesterday, it's been very, very busy, very active around here as far as tragedy, and it's starting to take a mental toll on me. It's draining me, because when I think, even today in the service, when they were talking about the Texas disaster and tragedies there, pastor said, I don't know how they feel. I'm sitting in the 32nd row thinking, I know exactly how they feel.
Right.
As far as devastation. And it's horrible, but everybody needs a system, everybody needs a village to help them, and that's what it's going to take. But you can tell that it kind of slowed me down just now thinking about that, because it drains you when you start talking to these families. When I'm talking to this mother about the loss of her child, she has the need to tell me the details, right, because she needs to vocalize it. So I'm listening, and as I'm listening, it's just like ripping this hole in my chest and just dumping salt in it, and I'm feeling everything all over again. I have triggers like that all the time. Just when I walk out on a hot, humid day, I can remember standing in my yard in my work clothes, sweating head to toe, bawling. When I drive home every day, I can see the gouges in the road where I jumped the road in my wife's car that day, rushing home to try to get to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it every day. Every day I see those scratches in the pavement. Every day I come home, I see those scratches in the pavement, I'm there again.
Mm-hmm.
And these hot, sweltering days, it just sucks the life right out of me. And I don't I don't foresee it getting any better per se, but what do you do?
Right. You had mentioned something earlier, about when you knew God before all of this happened, right? And through this process, you've grown in your relationship with God. Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's
Sure.
kind of the way I took that, and it's funny. You said something almost word for word of what we talk about often on here, right? Because as men, as we're growing, whatever it is that we're dealing with in life, right? It's all about striving. It's all about trying to be better tomorrow than what you were today, right? You almost said that word for word. And allowing something like this to draw you closer to the Lord, I can only imagine it being extremely difficult at times, right? Do you care to expand on that?
Well, so there were several reasons in my life why I've attempted to grow my relationship with God. Obviously strengthen my marriage, strengthen my my ability to father my sons, or to be a good parent to my sons, be a good leader in my home. But I'd be lying if I didn't say to ensure that I see my daughter again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that I guess when you say I'm witnessing to people, because I have some friends close to me that aren't really solid believers, and every day I chisel away at them a little bit. I try,
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I'm actually like trying. It's like I want them to understand what I understand.
Right.
Like and I tell them all the time, you read the Bible and you read about these places, and we can go grab a flight and we can be there tomorrow and touch them.
Right.
These places are there. Like, it's irrefutable that Jesus walked this earth. Why would you choose not to believe the rest?
Right.
And this is kind of a silly analogy that I use to people, but it's true. We've all scratched a lottery ticket. We've all bought a lottery ticket.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it'd be very hard pressed to find somebody who hasn't. You're willing to gamble your money on a 1 in 10 million chance to win a little bit of money.
Right.
Okay. If you told me my odds were 1 in 10 million to see my daughter again, and all I had to do was to believe that Jesus was my Lord and Savior, I'm scratching that ticket.
Right.
Every single time.
Yeah.
However, I have it on really good knowledge that the odds are far better.
Yeah. Yeah. Far better.
So I know that's a silly analogy, but we're willing to gamble our life just like a dollar.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. So I would be lying if I didn't say that being face to face with my daughter again wasn't probably my biggest motivator as it should be.
Right.
Now I also have to apply that to my boys and my family, and I want to be face to face with all of them.
Right.
In eternity.
Yes.
And I know that that's probably a little bit of a selfish thing to say, but when asked what motivates me, that was the thing that motivated me. And as I grow, this is another hard topic to talk about. We're all supposed to love God more than we love our wife and our kids. I love God more than anything. And perhaps some people really, really do. I don't know. How do you prove that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to prove that. But we're humans. And that's a very hard thing for us to comprehend, but it's something that we've got to learn to comprehend. And I think that's what we're all really, at the end of the day, what we're striving to do.
Right.
To love him like we're supposed to.
Well, and I don't think you're too far off, right? The wanting to see your daughter again, right? Our number one job here on earth, obviously to exalt Jesus Christ, but he's given us people as men. He's given us people to steward. Correct. Our wives, our children, right? Outside of Jesus, those are the most important people in our lives. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to go to heaven to make sure you see your daughter again. I don't think there's anything. I think it's admirable, actually. Because here's what's happened in the process of I want to follow Jesus for many reasons, but one of them is to see family, right? Your daughter, my niece, right? So on and so forth. In this process, Jesus meets us where we're at, right? And then in turn, our relationship with him grows, right? Now, not only do we want to see our family, but I also want to lead my wife and my children to the feet of Jesus. But I know that if I'm going to lead them there, because I want them to be in heaven, I want them to be in heaven more than I want to be in heaven, right? I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And I think other people understand what I'm saying. But in that process, if I'm going to properly lead them there, I have to be there first, right? I can only lead them to places I've been, right? So if I'm leading them to the feet of Jesus, I have to be there first. And in that process of may seem selfish ambition, right? Which I don't think it is, of leading my family there, my relationship grows, right? I am honored, maybe not honors. I'm blessed would be the better term. I'm blessed because I am trying to fulfill my duties that God's given me here on earth, right? And, stewarding my relationship with my wife, stewarding my relationship with my children, growing in ministry, right? Those types of things, which is all of what you're doing. And in that process, we grow in our relationship with Jesus, right? I don't know that it's necessarily, I don't know if we're capable of loving God more than we love our wives, right? I don't know. Like I understand that concept.
I know what we're supposed to do.
Right.
And I know people know what they're supposed to say.
Mm-hmm.
But do we really?
Right. But the thing is, and here's the catch though. If you're going to properly love your wife, you have to love Jesus first.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And so they're really two in the same. If I'm going to properly lead my wife, if I'm going to properly love her the way that she deserves to be loved, it's going to be through the eyes of Jesus, right? Because I'm going to lead her the way that Jesus led me.
That's right.
And so loving her is in the, the Bible talks about love your wives as Christ loved the church, right? That's the command. Love your wives as Christ, and he gave himself for her, right? Denying myself by saying, I love you, and in loving you, I understand that I have to serve him.
Learning through play starts with Lego Duplo. With Lego Duplo, toddlers can develop real-life skills while having fun with colorful bricks made just for them. Large, easy to grip, and safe to explore. When children express themselves with Lego Duplo, they build patience, problem-solving, and empathy. See your child learn perseverance and self-expression with everything they imagine and create. Visit lego.com/preschool to learn more.
So I want to serve him better, to love you better. That's command.
Sure.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
And there's a distinction, I believe, in first and most.
Right.
We love Jesus first. That was my point earlier, is do we really love him the most, more than our children or our wife? I mean, we're talking about our wives.
Right.
There's not a limit to what we would do for our children.
Right.
Or our wives, but our children we have more of maybe not more of, but we have an instinctive protecting spirit over them, and so maybe first and most aren't the same things, and we've got to love Jesus first, but as people, it's a very hard conversation to have with some people, because I've got some people in my life that I look up to spiritually, and they happen to be a couple of men. One in particular I'm thinking about, his world revolves around his son. Mm-hmm. His son's an adult now. His world revolves around his son. Does he love God more than he loves his son? Would he place that son on an altar?
Right.
That's the real hard topic.
Right.
Like, that's the real hard nut to crack. And it's probably going to be an uncomfortable conversation with anybody. But if we're really being really true to ourselves, I mean, God knows the truth.
Right.
If we're really being really true to ourselves, and as men, we need a mission, right?
Absolutely.
We always need a mission.
Always.
So maybe that needs to be our mission. How do we learn to love God more than what we love what's here? Mm-hmm. But I think what you said is absolutely correct. You're not going to properly love anything that's here until you love God. So you're going to love God first. If you don't love God first, then everything else is just, always going to remain second. And so that's a hard topic.
It is a hard topic. I knew a man. He was deacon at a church. I won't mention his name. I won't mention what church he went to, anything like that. It wasn't ours. And he said, if somebody come into my home with intent to hurt my family, he said, I don't know that I could take his life. He said, because I don't know where he's going to go. And I thought, oh my goodness. Like, well, I agree. I don't think that people understand. We go both ways, right? And human beings are so bad about one or the other, right? Either we're going to love our families and like that's going to be the sole focus, right? And we leave Jesus out of it, or we're going to love Jesus and we're going to leave our families out. But that's not what the Bible says.
I know both kinds.
Yeah. But that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says to love your wives as Christ loved the church and serve. And he served the church. He gave himself for her. There on earth, that's our first mission. That's mission number one, and it lasts a lifetime, right? Our children are number two. Our children are mission number two, and it lasts a lifetime, right? I've got kids old enough now; they're grown, college, married, stuff like that. And there's nothing I love more even now than they call it, hey, Dad, I need something, or hey, I've got a question about just life, and stuff like that. But they are they're our first mission. Our family is our mission, and so yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Loving your wives and your family and such, especially. And I don't mean to keep coming back here, but I think about everything that you've already been through, right? And I would imagine. The truth is, and you've already said this, and I'm just kind of want to expand on it a little bit. We all have choices. Every one of us have choices. No matter what's going on in your life, you have two ways of handling everything. You can allow it to destroy you, or you can give it to God and allow him to work through you, which obviously is exactly what you guys are doing. And kudos to you guys, right? Because I can only imagine the way that all of that would bring back the memories. You were talking about being triggered and stuff like that. The more that I learn about men, the more I learn about one, we're all traumatized. We have all been through something.
Sure.
Right. Whether it's loss, whether it's abuse, whether it's father wounds, whether it's you, right. We all, and I had no idea how traumatized people really are, right? I've dealt with things in my past, right? That has traumatized me that I had to work through that I didn't, nobody knew, right? Mine was not vocal for everybody to see. Mine was very silent. I had been married for over 10 plus years before my wife even knew, right? And we all deal with anything, but the point is, you can allow that to destroy you, or you can allow God to work through it, And I know so many people that they just break, right? They just allow that grief to hold them in such a hostage position, right? I don't even know if that's that's really the only way I know how to describe that.
Yeah, you're a prisoner to your grief,
And it's like, man, Jesus has got so much more for you than to stay here, And so I look at all the things that you guys are doing, right? With the Reese Foundation and all this, these really, it may be hard to describe it, but it's beautiful, right? These things that here people are in their darkest times, and you guys are a beacon of hope, right? And it kind of goes to prove that we all go through things, every one of us, and God gives purpose to those things. God gives purpose to our pain, pain is inevitable, right? It's unfortunately, we will all of us will pass away at one point unless the Lord comes back before then, right? The older I get, the more real that is. I have more family that is passing away. I have more, the friends and stuff, and you see death in a different light. But at the same time, that's all of our fates, right? But the exciting thing is that we have eternity, right? Once time in our apologetics class this morning, we were talking about this. We were talking about how when we were created, we didn't know time until then, right? But once we begin to know time, we will know time forever, right? We will spend eternity in heaven, and that's hope.
So, one thing that I say, grief is really a selfish act. And I know that sounds off-putting in the general term, but for my instance, especially, I'm sad for myself and my wife and my kids. I'm not sad for Reese.
Right.
I don't have a question where she's at.
Right.
She spent 3.5 years on this earth and never had a bad day.
Yeah.
Knew nothing but love and fun.
Yeah.
Every day. And God packs so much love and fun in those 3.5 years. And I look back now and think how blessed we were to be able to give her the life that she had. Whether it were trips to the beach or Disney or birthday parties or, whatever the case may be, but she had 3.5 years and she loved so hard. And just, she was like the definition of love and trust. Every day I would come home and I'd hear little feet pattering across the tile, and she just, before I could get my arms down, she was jumping already. Or I tell this story, she would stand on it. We have an island in the middle of our kitchen, and she would stand on it, and she would love and trust me so much that she would just leap. She knew I was going to catch her. Yeah. Even when I wasn't expecting it, she just trusted that I was going to catch her. And it's as silly as it sounds, if we have that same kind of trust in our Father, and we take those leaps, when God's talking to you and telling you to do things, like I said, men need a mission, and our mission, a lot of us are as fathers, and my mission is to still be Reese's father, and to work in her honor and her memory and carry on her legacy and that love and that trust, and I'm still just being her dad.
Right.
And like I said, I'm sad selfishly. People say the things, we talk about things people say. They say, well, if you could see where Reese was at now, you wouldn't want to bring her back. Well, I'll tell you that, but that's a lie. I'd snatch her and bring her back in a heartbeat. That's just my human nature. But I do find solace in knowing where she is.
Right.
And that she's going to blink those pretty little eyes and I'm going to be standing there with her.
Yeah.
And I know that. And that's one of the only pieces of comfort you can, if you can call it comfort in loss, the only piece of comfort you can take is knowing that she was at the age where there's no question. There's no question where she was going. But if I could love and trust like her, man, life would be just a better place. We all, like you said, we all live through trauma, and I've lived through the things in life that turned me bitter or sour or even rotten at times in my life. But, if we could all love and trust the way she did, life would be a much more beautiful place. Yeah. And so that's what we try to do. We try to spread that love in her name and just be her parents. And that's one of my proudest titles is Reese's dad. And, until I draw my last breath of oxygen off this planet, that's exactly what I'm going to do.
100%. That's awesome, man. And, it doesn't matter if we make it easy, right? No, but the hope is where it's at, right? You know, the hope that Jesus is true to his word, right? And that we will see them again one day, you know.
Yeah, I think those, you know, like I tell people who I'm witnessing to or telling my story to, you know, the odds are far better than that, you know, than that of a lottery ticket or whatever. But, you know, and I know this is kind of an old cliche saying, but I tell some of these people that I'm dealing with who maybe are having doubts, or, you know, it seems like I don't really run across a lot of people that just don't believe in God. They believe in something, but they don't want to really believe in nothing. And, you know, I have a close friend I work with, and before he had children, he would tell me, you know, I just kind of think that the lights go off.
Right.
And I said, well, you know, that's kind of it's a bleak outlook, you know. Now that his daughter has been born, he's got a mission, and he sees life differently. And I asked him the other day, I said, you still think the lights go off? So where do you think all that little ball of joy goes? You know, when one day when she leaves the earth, you know, hopefully she's 110, but where does all that energy and love go? It's something that it's worth thinking about. You know, you're 100%. An analytical guy. You like looking into information on anything in the world. Look into this, because when you look into that, you know, I think sometimes people fear that they're not going to have a choice but to.
Right.
And he's a good guy. You know, he believes everybody should just be a good person, and I believe that as well. But, you know, this was the cliche thing I was saying. If I believe and I'm wrong, I've lost nothing.
That's right.
But if you don't believe and you're wrong, you've lost everything.
Everything.
Because this is nothing.
Yeah.
This is nothing. What we're doing here is nothing. Yeah. Nothing. You know, we obviously are trying to make the best of the time that we have here, and you know, life, if you look at life in a loss scenario, it's kind of a cruel thing. You know, we're designed to love. That's the biggest gift we have, that we've been given, and it's the biggest gift we can give, and that's our biggest goal, love. And we're created to love and to bond and to have that love and trust.
Yes.
You know, and knowing that it's all everything that we know here, because we only really base our beliefs on what we know.
Right.
You know, we're only willing to latch on to those things that we know. You know, we know. You know, I you know, in my job, we sell vehicles, and I offer warranties to people. It's a peace of mind, you know. Now, if I could show everybody the future and show them that their car was going to break, everybody would want to have that peace of mind. But they just can't latch onto the things that they don't know a lot of times.
Right.
And that's how we are as humans. You know, if we, but gosh, what would be the point in having faith if we could look forward and see, which we're told. It's in writing. It's in black and white.
Yes.
We know. We know better.
Yeah.
We've been told.
That's
Can't
right.
say. And, you know, I often tell people growing up where we grow up kind of in the Midwest and the Bible Belt, you know, we don't have that plausible deniability.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to turn that, you know, we don't have that plausible deniability. We know what the score is. And we can't deny that, you know, that there's something we need to give a little more attention to. We need to look into.
Yeah, and not to get off on an apologetics, you know, rant, because I could spend all day there. But, you know, Romans talks about creation, and I'm paraphrasing, but creation presents itself in a way that people shouldn't have to question, right? You know, and there is so much factual evidence, not only for the life of Jesus. You know, you had said earlier that it's unrefutable. Jesus is a historical person, right? But not only for Jesus, the death, burial, and resurrection, but look at creation. Look at the stars. Look at our body. right? The information that our body gives us right now in the apologetics class that I teach, we're going through the three major arguments for the existence of God, right? So you have the cosmological argument, which is creation. Everything was created, therefore there must be a creator, right? The teleological argument, everything was designed, right? You look at like the anthropic principles and DNA and all these different things, and there's a fingerprint that is there. So if it was designed, it must have a designer. And then the moral argument, which is, there are moral laws. Even Romans talks about that even the Gentiles obey, and they don't even have the law, right? It is written on our hearts. There's a moral law written on our hearts. Well, there's laws, there's a lawgiver, right? And they all point to God, right? And when you begin to dive into this, the evidence is so overwhelming. I spend my days in awe most of the time, as I'm studying and I'm digging and I'm reading, and I'm just like, God, why didn't I know this? You know what I mean? But to go back to what you were saying, people, they'll find out one day, right? And hopefully it's now, right? This is our hope. This is our prayer. Hopefully they find out and they understand now that there's a God, and not only is there a God, but he loves all of us so much. One of the things that we talk about is the Trinity. The plan for redemption. People often talk about the plan of redemption starting at the cross, but it didn't. The plan of redemption started in creation. Before the very first words were spoken, Jesus already knew what he was going to have to do, right? He already knew. And what's so crucial about the Trinity is that, man, it's crazy. I've had this conversation a bunch lately, but is that
this episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
There was already, in order to love somebody, there has to be a recipient of love, right? Well, God always had that. There's three of them. They always loved. And so why did he create us? He didn't create us out of necessity because he needed a recipient of love. He already had that. He had a son. He has the Holy Spirit. He created us out of an overwhelming love, right? And that's the reason why he gave us free will, right? So free will has to be both both has to be acceptable and deniable, right? In order for free will to exist. And yet God created us with this will because there's no higher love that we can give than deny ourselves and choose to follow him, right? And this is that's the crux of everything, right? And in that everything else falls in line. In this pursuit of following God, and I wish people would grasp a hold of this. If because we had mentioned earlier, if you really want to love your wife, if you properly want to love your wife, follow God, right? And there's so much enjoyment in that, right? Learning how to properly love your wife. I remember I tell people, I was a grown man before I ever realized that I was doing it all wrong. I was married for several years, right? I had to come to my wife, Dusty. I had to come to her and I was like, I'm sorry. Like I had no idea how wrong I had been, right? I had no idea that I was not loving you the way that you deserved, right? And since this, and don't get me wrong, I fell so often and so many times in so many ways, right? None of us are perfect. But in this process of striving, right, to follow God, our relationship has become something that I never knew that it could. Right. I mean, and as much as we've always loved each other, we've been married for 22 years, we've got 6 kids, and for the first 15 years of it, I didn't even know what I was doing. It was like a lost pup wandering around with the blindfold on, whatever. And as my relationship has grown in Christ, my relationship has also grown with my wife. And it's been, like I said, it's been fun. It's been encouraging. There's so much there, right? Sorry, I got off on a tangent.
But that ties into exactly what we were talking about earlier when I was talking about Reese, the way she loved and trusted. You want to see how to properly love God. Watch how a child loves.
That's right.
A child loves in the purest form.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to not love properly.
That's right.
All they know is you're their everything.
Mm-hmm.
She loved and trusted me like no other.
Right.
And if I could love God more closely to the way she loved me,
mm-hmm.
I'd be so much better off. So that's what I learned. She, it's funny, to say a 3-year-old taught me how to live in just a few short years, and I'm still learning that, and I still pick up things on that every day.
Right.
And it's just if we could all
mm-hmm.
be so pure and loving and trusting, that's what she was created to do. That's what we're created to do, and
right.
we cloud that. We cloud that with this world. So
that's right. That's right.
It's all there in front of us, man. And I'll continue to use her as inspiration for things. And my son, my son Cooper's 7. He's nonverbal autistic,
mm-hmm.
And he amazes me every day.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I can scold him on something, and within 10 seconds, it's like it never happened. And he's right back around me. He holds no grudges.
Mm-hmm.
He trusts. He loves. And a lot of that is a testament to my wife. She's such a big-hearted person, and our parenting.
mm-hmm.
We, like I said, Reese's 3.5 years were full of love and fun, and I'm so blessed to call myself her dad, and that my wife was her mother, and she, she didn't know she had a short life.
Right.
We know.
Right.
But she didn't. And if we go back to the why, think of it. Whether it's my wife and myself, or people that know Reese's story, or somebody that gives to the foundation, or somebody that receives from the foundation, how many people has she led to God?
Yeah.
And
has given hope, and
maybe that's her why.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have that answer. And like I said, I don't search for that answer. I don't require that answer. And the day that I'm able to get it, I'm certainly not gonna need it.
Is that faith that you're talking about? Is that love that you're talking about? Being like, okay, God, I trust you. You know what I mean? I'm going to jump.
I'm jumping.
I trust you. And man, that's a powerful testament all in its own. That is powerful. And I was wondering if I wanted to go there. I was sitting here thinking a while ago about your son Cooper. Because I have a special needs son also.
Right.
He's 17, and that presents a whole different set of challenges, all on its own. And being able to, and maybe we just need to do a separate podcast on that one, but
sure. Different challenges, same mission.
Different challenges, same mission. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and being able to teach them to love, because to where Austin, he's not nonverbal. He's intellectual disability is what right. So he operates at I can't remember what they said his IQ. I think it was like 35. Right. And, of course he's adopted, right. He's my son, but, we adopted him, and, awful awful experience, even by the time he was 6 years old, right? So, but the challenges that special needs presents as, you know, as father and as a son that has special needs, you want to talk about teaching you things. Listen, I'm Austin. Austin has come so far. He has done so much, but I guarantee you, he has taught me more than I've taught him.
Yeah, you know, it seems like I often say that, you know, Braxton, you know, shook my world up. Reese completely turned it upside down. You know, having a little girl and learning to be completely opposite person of who I was. And then Cooper has found a way to balance everything back out for me and teach me the other things I needed to know. So,
yeah,
you know, we could probably do an episode on each of my kids and each of your kids but it's at the end of the day, like you said, different challenges, same mission. But if you have that love and you have that trust and you have your faith, I mean, it's a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's begin to land this plane. Tell us about the foundation.
So the foundation, I told you, you know, we had money sitting there. We didn't know what to do with it, and I said we got to do something. And you know, so since then, some of the things we do, I think we're still doing the scholarships. Then Easter, Christmas, and Thanksgiving there in our small community of Naylor, we put on a community dinner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, free to the public, and it's not just if you don't have food. Actually, we always say if you need friends, family, food, or fellowship, we want you there. And my wife cooks a big spread, and you know, people do donate. Obviously, we always have a Reese Foundation jar there at my wife's store in Naylor, there, the depot. And people do donate, and we're grateful for that. You know, and then at the school every year we hand out school supplies for the kids of Naylor. Yeah, we obviously would like to grow this far past our small community, but we're processing this as it's laid on us.
Right.
You know, I think there's roughly 300 kids in Naylor, and last year we gave out 125 packets.
Oh wow!
And my wife does it per grade. You know, goes through their needed list, and it's very well orchestrated. And we love kids, and you know, we built a playground there in the town of Naylor. It's got Reese's sign there, the Reese Ainley Play Place. You know, we just try to do things. We want all kids to feel that love. You know, Valentine's Day. I have a soft heart for kids. Valentine's Day in Naylor, they do these. You can send like a candygram to your kid for $1 or what, I don't know what club is. We make sure every child, at least in elementary, gets something. Yeah. You know, I can remember being a little kid and not getting anything. Yeah. I grew up kind of in rough, less advantaged than the rest probably, and little things like that. And then of course our big thing, our big heartbeat is when somebody in the area loses a family, we try to be there for them, not just financially with the final expenses, but emotionally.
Right.
And, you know, like that's really hard. It's hard. It is hard to open those wounds back up every time.
Yeah.
And, you know, but like I said, I don't know what God sounds like, but I know what he feels like. And it's when God places being a giver on your heart, there's so much you have to learn. And I question this all the time. Anytime he lays something on my heart to do, am I doing this for the right reason? Take me out of this. And, you know, that's what we initially tried to do with the foundation, was to be anonymous. You know, you would just basically see a check with her picture on it. And then, you know, we started people contacting, thank you for what you're doing. And I always want to tell them, hey, listen, this is her.
Yeah.
I'm just a tool here.
Yeah.
You know, but we eventually had, I don't know why we felt the need to explain ourselves to people, but you get the whole political, where's this money going and things like that. And, you know, of course, those folks have a lot to learn about being a giver. Even whenever I'm led to do something personally, aside from the foundation, something is laid on my heart and I give. I've had to learn how to, how to give without expectation
Mm-hmm.
or anything,
Yeah.
without question. We had a lady one time who she actually does go to our church, but she can quote scripture front and back.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I wouldn't give to your foundation because I don't know where it goes. And I said, well, that's okay. You're just not a giver.
Yeah.
And she said, I am a giver in the name of Jesus. And I said, well, you can say whatever name you want, but I don't think you understand what I'm telling. You're not a giver, because a giver gives without expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that you're able to learn that. And so, like I said earlier, learning to be a giver is extremely hard.
Yeah.
But this foundation is just, it gives us a way to not only keep Reese's name relevant and spoken and remembered and loved, but she had so much more to give this world than what she was able to do. And she only needed 3.5 years to plant that seed.
Right.
And we're going to cultivate that until we can't anymore. But yeah, the Reese Ainley Foundation, she's got a Facebook page. We do the Reese Fest every year. That's basically our main fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that in the beginning of June.
Mm-hmm.
Every year seems like we get rained out, which it's fun. We had petting zoos and all kinds of things, but it's
cool.
definitely, we want to love our community and just keep her name alive and relevant. That's all I have left of her.
So if somebody wanted to donate, right? Somebody's listening to this and like, oh man, I want to give to that. How do they do that?
You can get on her Reese Ainley Foundation Facebook page. We have hats and shirts always. The Reese Ainley Foundation Facebook page is really the best way to do that. And then our store, my wife has the store, The Depot, there in Naylor. But reach out on the Facebook page, and my wife has all the links. We are a 501c3. We're a nonprofit. That was very important to us. So as silly as it sounds, it is a taxable donation. So we definitely have the forms for all that. But one of these days, as this grows, I envision this being much larger, and it's already become something that I didn't know what it was going to be.
Right.
But I knew we had to do something, and you'll hear me say that if you're around me very much. I'm not really sure what to do right now, but I know we've got to do something. The foundation recently just purchased a couple historic buildings there downtown in our town because our community stood behind us so much and poured love out on us, and we're going to reciprocate that. Right. So, and I also want her foundation to have some residual assets, I guess you could say. I don't want this just to stop when I stop,
right,
or when my wife stops. We want this to be a lasting thing, and then we want this to be a legacy. So we purchased those buildings. We're going to try to get them fixed up. I haven't really put a timeline on it because, I don't really know what we're going to do with them, but I know it's going to turn into something.
Right.
And we're going to use it in a positive way. But the town needed it. The town needed somebody to step in that cared, and we care about the town the way the town cared about Reese. So we're waiting to receive orders on what to do there. So
right.
we just stay on guard and go where we're told and carry out what's laid on our heart, and we're excited for whatever the future holds with any of that. But
well, as we land this plane, and I know that we've already opened up so many emotions already, but speak to somebody out there that may be going through, another father or another, brother, whoever that may be listening to this, that has been through something tragic, right? If you don't mind.
Sure. And it doesn't just have to be loss of a child or loss of necessarily anybody, but there is a better way. Life can be very, very hard to understand and tough and unfair. Unfair is a great word. Life can be so unfair, but you can have you can have relief in knowing that there is more. There is help. Reach out to me. Reach out to Anthony. There are people that love you no matter who you are. We serve a God that loves us unconditionally, and if you're living through that, just know that there's another way to handle things. It doesn't have to be the end, and I don't mean to go off on a different. My son here a while back had done something, broken a pretty bad rule, and I kind of came down on him a little bit, let him have a couple minutes, and I came back in there and I said, "Hey, listen, this is bad. It's not the end."
That's right.
It's bad, but it's not the end. It's not the end of the world. We can make it through this, and we will. Mm-hmm. And that's what people need to understand is you can live through things even when you don't want to. And I know that. And always remember, even when the devil's coming for you, God will fight harder. Mm-hmm. And the things that the devil are telling you, they're lies. And any resource that I can ever be, any help that I can ever offer, obviously I'm here for that.
Mm-hmm. Man, Ryan, this has been amazing. It really has been. And I appreciate you being willing to open up these, because I know this conversation has not been easy, right? And my gratitude towards you for opening it up to the men who may need to hear this, who also are dealing with loss or grief or whatever it is. I mean, like you said, it doesn't just necessarily have to be loss. But men, I want you to know, that those of you who are listening, that if you've got questions, you can always, like Ryan said, you can always reach out to us. You can reach out to me, realmen@palaceofpraise.com, and you can always contact us on Facebook or Instagram, TikTok, all those good things. Just like you can Ryan and the Reese Foundation and all that stuff. But know that Jesus loves you, and that He is for you, and that He has a plan for your life, and that does not include defeat. We may have losses, right? But that doesn't mean that we are defeated. And so know that He loves you, and He does have a plan. And so, as always, I want to end this in a prayer. Holy Spirit, teach us to be leaders of our homes, of our communities, and of our churches, and teach us to be godly, courageous men. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
You've been listening to Real Men Talk. If you'd like to get in touch with us, shoot us an email, realmen@palaceofpraise.com, or visit our website at realmenministries.us. You can also message us through social media. If you're a man age 16 and up and would like to be a part of the conversation, join us at the Palace of Praise every Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. If you don't have a home church, consider joining us for worship on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. Palace of Praise is located at 1400 Herschel Best Boulevard in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. New episodes of Real Men Talk drop every Thursday at 5 p.m. on all major podcast platforms. You can also find us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, X, and Facebook. Real Men Talk is a production of Real Men Studios in cooperation with Palace Media Services.